Welcome to the Stuff and Things Podcast. Your home for all stuff related to your favorite things in entertainment. Now, here are your hosts.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Stuff and Things podcast. It is me, Stefan. I am joined today by the lovely Kaylee.
Hi.
And we are talking The Last of Us. A quick thing to start the show. We are aware we are 3 weeks behind on this show. This is due to some issues we've had with technology. I've had a new recording deck turn up. I had to get all that sorted out. Sam, unfortunately, has actually injured his back at the moment, so he is unable to record. I've had COVID and all sorts of illnesses, so it has been a few weeks of awfulness. But we are back getting the show underway. I'm sure all the listeners join me in sending our get well soons to Sam, and hopefully he'll be back for next week's podcast. But for the moment, we have 3 episodes of The Last of Us to talk about. We have episode 4, Please Hold My Hand. Episode 5, Endure and Survive, and Episode 6, Kin, to speak about. I am doing all the editing and everything else this week without Sam here, so I'm just going to throw out an apology. We'll see how this podcast goes. I've never done one of these proper editing things on the new podcasting deck. It's all new and super fancy. So hopefully you're all listening to this podcast and it doesn't sound too bad.
It will be amazing, I'm sure. Good job.
That's what I like to hear. How are you doing, Kaylee? How have these last 3 episodes treated you?
Well, as I said on Discord, I think we need to have some words because I don't feel like you are being my friend right now, making me watch this every week.
I mean, it's a brilliant show, right? Let's just...
It's amazing. I'm really enjoying it, but I didn't anticipate quite how traumatizing it was going to be every single week. Like, I thought we'd have the first bit with Tess and, we'd get a bit of a, respite on the savageness of the show. But no, it's just every week ongoing. Every single night.
So the last episode we spoke about was obviously a long, long time, which was Bill's... kind of learning about Bill and things and his relationship and how that ended. And obviously, I know that one kind of hit you quite hard.
Yeah.
And then we go into Please Hold My Hand, and this was a little bit of a respite, I suppose. It wasn't too much.
It was, and it was the shortest episode of the series. But it wasn't a filler episode. It was a really good episode, and it moved the story along really, really well. But again, it brought characters in that I got invested in really quickly. And no show has done that for such a long time.
Yeah.
So I'm not complaining about it.
With this show, when you get invested in a character, I think you've got to understand that chances are
we know every time I mention somebody, you and Sam both go, "Oh, don't get attached." So I've learnt my lesson, and I know I put a mark on Hot Beard Guy last week. The second I said it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. That was a mistake. When there was a moment in the WhatsApp group you put about, I think you or Sam said something about, don't get too attached to Ellie and Joel because you never know. And I just put like the little looking eyes emoji, and I was like, yeah, I'll leave it at that. And then at the end of this week's episode, Joel gets shot. So, or he gets stabbed, sorry. So, yeah.
Well, that just ruined my day.
Yeah, I can imagine. We'll get on to the episode, Kin, in a moment. Let's start with, so Please Hold My Hand. It kind of starts off, Joel's discussing how petrol breaks down, which I always like that, especially in this sort of a show in the apocalypse and stuff. We know we're 20 odd years into it, the fact they actually expand on the fact that, you know, petrol does break down, it doesn't work forever, and I'm like, I know Sam listening will give you like a little like, yes, having watched the Walking Dead and stuff, and then them just putting up in trucks, and you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, see, I don't, that wouldn't have ever registered in my mind. If they hadn't have explained it there and then in the show, that wouldn't have even clicked. It would have been oh right, yeah, off he's going to get some fuel. You know, it would. It's just not the kind of thing I would think about.
Yeah. No, it's true. We've watched a lot of these programs, and it's always one of those things that really bugs us. Of like, kind of, you know, not everything will last forever. Eventually, everything's going to break down. You know, even the tins of tuna and beans are going to have an expiry date on them eventually.
Well, that's the thing that probably I thought about the most was the food, and I don't know if it was this episode or the one after where they're eating tinned ravioli or something, and I'm thinking, I know it lasts a long time, but
You're
20
years. Yeah.
There's some experiments to be done there. Yeah.
Oh no. Yeah, I've got a tin of beans in the cupboard. I'm going to leave them for the next 20 years, and then I'm going to try.
We'll do a whole episode on that in 20 years' time.
Yeah. Why is Stefan not here this week? He's ill.
Well.
What did you think of Ellie finding a joke book?
Well, those jokes are right up my street. That is the kind of level of humour that I have, and people don't understand it. So it just made me love her even more. And it was a really good way, actually, for her to kind of break down some of those barriers with Joel, because everybody loves a stupid joke. I don't care what you say. The stupider, is that a word?
The stupider.
The more ridiculous, the better. The simpler, the better, you know, when it comes to jokes, in my opinion. And it's the best way. And I think she knew that. And her immaturity, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah, it is also, it's nice. It's the same book that she uses in the video game.
Oh, right. Oh, I didn't know that. Obviously, having not played the game.
During, like, when there's non-combat scenes and you're just walking around, every now and again she'll take the book out and she'll read jokes out loud. So very similar to this. I think some of them, I think it's the Scarecrow joke is actually the same as one of the ones actually used in the game as well. So it was a nice kind of bridge on the jokes. I liked that.
Oh, that's good that they can, and that it's got that stuff that you can call back to the game. But again, having not played the game, it's a nice touch without even having known that, you know. But people who played the game, I imagine that they were quite excited by that.
Nice. Either way, it's a nice kind of way that it happens to kind of help break down the barriers. We do obviously find them get to Kansas City.
Is that different? I heard a rumour that it was not Kansas City.
I believe
in the
it was
game.
Pittsburgh or something in the game.
Okay.
So it's slightly changed.
Any reason why they would do that you know of?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. I must be honest. It was one of those kind of. I didn't think too much of on it. It was only a little bit into the episode. I was like, wait a minute. I'm sure they're in a different place. But we also we meet the rebels. I guess we'd call them that have overthrown the Fedra in that area. And their leader Kathleen. What did you think of Kathleen?
Well, I stopped myself from saying I love Melanie because, you know, when I say that, things happen. But
and they did.
I really like her anyway, and it was nice to see her in a role like that because you don't tend to see it very often with her. But I struggled a little bit because there was part of me that thought, oh my God, she is brutal. You know, she's another Fedra equivalent. But actually, when you hear her story and you hear what she's been through, you kind of side with her. And I was really torn, thinking, depending on which side of the fence you're sat on, she could be the good guy or she could be the bad guy. Obviously, from our viewpoint, in this scenario, she was the bad guy. But if we were listening to her story from the beginning, would I feel like that about her?
Then Henry would very much be the bad guy and kind of, I can't believe he did this. Yeah. Henry and Sam are characters we meet at the very end of this episode. So we'll get to those in a moment. What did you think of the whole Joel and Ellie running into the group who kind of attacked them? You had Ellie with the kind of more naive, oh, aren't we going to stop and help him? Look, he's injured. And Joel, like, seatbelt on, lock the doors, we're going. Yeah,
well, you know he's been through this before. You know, you just get that from him. He knows exactly what's coming. He does it, you know, he keeps his wits about him.
I can well imagine that him and Tommy have pulled this prank themselves with Tommy standing in the road going, I'm hurt.
Absolutely. He's not daft.
No.
Joel. But again, it shows that soft side of Ellie, which I think we'll see less of as she gets hardened to these kind of things.
I think you're right on that one. Obviously, they then the car gets crashed into the shop, and we get a kind of bit of a gunfire fight across the street. Joel is very much kind of playing the protector in this. He sees a gap in the wall, gets Ellie to cross through into it, and Joel, being Joel, is just kick-ass and takes out the majority. We do have Ellie in the end has to kind of come to Joel's rescue. What was your take on the Ellie rescue scene?
The whole way through that scene, my heart was in my mouth because it wasn't something that you couldn't see it. You just kind of imagined, you just saw Ellie behind the wall, and you could imagine all these things that were happening, and you didn't know what she was going to turn around and find when she snuck her head out. But all I could think of was, I'm glad she took that gun. That's all I could think of. And I'm thinking she's going to have to use it. She's going to get a rollicking. And it's going to go one way or the other. But it was good to see her kind of a bit vulnerable, because you could see that. You could see that she was scared, and while she's been in difficult situations before, perhaps it hasn't been to that degree.
Not to that level. And obviously this is the first time Joel finds out that she's got the gun. We know she snuck it in the backpack. He had no idea up until this point. So that could have been a bit of a surprise. I mean, and then we get the whole him apologising, like, sorry, it's my fault, shouldn't have had to do it. And then teaches her. He then teaches her how to hold the gun. Like, if you're going to do it, though, you need to do it properly. And
that was a really good moment for me. That was the first kind of fatherly, if we want to call it that, fatherly moment, and you see that compassion from him, because he knows that, she's a young girl. She shouldn't have to be doing stuff like this. And at any other time she wouldn't have had to, in the real world, in air quotes. But I really like that kind of tender moment between them, because you can see that they're starting to become a unit, I think.
Yeah, agreed. We find out Joel is 56 years old. He lets that go as he's climbing up the staircase. With Ellie kind of ripping him for the whole kind of, come on, it's only some stairs, let's go.
Yeah, he's got 20 years on me, and I will still struggle with that many stairs. So,
Yeah, I fully agree on that one. Yeah. The floors are all crumbling with like the fungus and stuff coming up through the walls and the ceiling and stuff. So we kind of see how we saw already how the fungus kind of links to each other. So there was a part of me that I was like, oh, wait a minute, what's going to be in the building? But they do find a way of kind of getting to like a safe floor, I guess. Joel being clever with the breaking the glass everywhere and laying it all down so that no one can get near them.
That was a really clever detail, actually, and it again opened that conversation for Ellie and Joel. And she pointed out that she's noticed that she doesn't hear so well on that side, which just those tiny little details, just
deaf on the right.
Yeah. But I honestly was waiting for something to jump out that whole time. They just rolled over and went to sleep after a ridiculous joke.
Oh, a couple of jokes, yeah. And then they are rudely awoken by Henry. Now, we've seen throughout the episode that the Kathleen character is desperate to find this Henry. We don't know what he's done yet. We just know that she is desperately out for him. And then we find that Henry is the person that wakes up Joel at the very end of that episode.
Yes.
Quite an awakening, being woken up by a young child holding a gun to your face.
Yes. That kind of, again, because I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting if something was going to happen, it was going to be an infected, not to see these two young lads with a gun
oh yes
pointing at them. It was quite an abrupt end for me, because like I said, it was a short episode, but I don't think they could have got the rest of that story across in another 15 minutes, so I'm happy that it finished when it did.
Yeah, it was a definitely kind of cliffhanger, leave you for the next week going, what now?
Yeah,
it was. So that leads us into Endure and Survive, episode 5. Now, this for me was a very difficult episode to watch. because I'd played the game and I knew what was going to happen to Sam and Henry from the start of the episode. I knew what was happening, and I knew what was going to happen, and I knew it was going to come along. And I'm watching this whole episode, and it starts with this flashback of Henry and Sam, and we really get to know the characters.
Yeah.
And what was your take of the flashbacks?
It took me a minute to realise that it wasn't a flashback from that long ago, like the others have been. But it was brutal in parts. You know, people hanging in the streets and being stabbed, and it was hard to watch at that point. And it was nice to see sort of Henry and Sam's relationship, I guess. And again, instant, but not having the knowledge that you have, obviously, which is another conversation because we need to talk about that. I was just thinking, oh, look, it's Henry and Sam. How lovely. What a nice little relationship that they've got.
Yeah, that should have been your warning sign. That should have been your red flag.
I know.
These guys seem nice. Oh, dear.
And then, obviously, with the doctor that we saw in episode 4 that Kathleen took out, I was glad to see that he didn't tell on them. He didn't give anything up. He was still protecting them right till the end. I didn't realise that he actually knew anything about Henry and Sam, the doctor, until that point. So he did a very good job at covering himself. But that whole interaction, and obviously when we see them going into hiding, that was a really good group of scenes for me of them in that loft.
So just a quick trivial for you. The person who plays Sam, I believe his name is Kevon Willard, he's actually deaf in real life.
See, I knew that.
Ah, there you go.
I knew that. I don't know how I knew that. I must have read it somewhere, but I did know that. Yeah. And I love that because you don't need to hire actors without disabilities if they've got them. Disabled people are good at acting. Just something pointing out there.
As this Sam character proves it completely. Yeah, he was
absolutely fantastic.
This character was fantastic throughout this whole episode, which made it so much worse that I knew what the ending was. I'm watching it, and we're seeing. So we've watched them, Henry and Sam. We've watched their kind of flashback and up to the point of where they meet Ellie and Joel. We learn how Kansas City now is like a free city. The Fedra, the brutal kind of killing of all the Fedra people, the stabbing, hung, shot, everything else was really quite a brutal scene, I think, there.
It was, and I think that was probably the most brutal, hard-hitting scene of the series for me until that point, because everything else had almost been... In my brain, I know that it's fiction. We don't have these infected people, ripping people apart from that first one with the soldier that shoots Sarah.
Yeah,
it felt the most real, if that makes sense to me.
And
that made it
uprising rebellion thing.
Yeah, and that made it all the more kind of hard hitting for me, I guess.
I agree. Yeah, it was kind of, that was people v people. That was kind of a lot. I always find people versus people more kind of almost scary than watching the people versus creatures.
Yeah.
Because like as we found out during the old COVID times and loo roll, we're only one disaster away from that almost becoming real. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And people are vile.
Well, that's true. That's true. So we learn Henry has a plan using the tunnels to get out of where they are. But we also kind of know from the previous episode that there's definitely something underground that's building there. So that kind of ups the tension levels a bit. I mean, even Joel's kind of like, wait a minute, the streets are empty because they're underground and you want us to use the underground?
You want to go underground. Yeah. Yeah, that was a really good way of, like you say, building that tension. And being underground always feels more scary anyway, doesn't it?
Just that little bit more like claustrophobic and kind of going through the tunnels. But they do then find what looks like an old kind of bunker area. And we see Ellie and Sam kind of bonding and sadly becoming a friendship.
Oh, it was lovely. And I think, again, it was just nice to see Ellie being a kid, because we haven't seen that from her at all. You know, even the school that she was in previously was a training camp type scenario. So to be
a federal school, yeah.
10 minutes of freedom almost, and they can read comics, and, you know, they were playing football, and their relationship, they bonded really quickly.
Yeah.
And that was lovely. She's obviously never had a friend, you know, and I think she took the role of a protector with him almost immediately.
Yeah, looking after him and kind of trying to learn the sign language and everything else was lovely to watch. Even like the playing the football and stuff and just kind of being children. Something that in that world, I guess neither of them have really been able to do too much.
No.
And we also get the conversation between Henry and Joel over what it is that Henry did to make him the most wanted man in Kansas. From that, I took from that, so Henry basically grasped on the leader of the rebellion, which happened to be Kathleen's brother, in order to get medication to save Sam. That is what I kind of took from that conversation.
Yes.
And then the brother got killed because of it, hence why Kathleen is out purely to kill him.
Yeah, it's a revenge story for Kathleen, isn't it? It's personal for her. I think if it had been anyone but her brother, and we see later on in another scene Kathleen talking about her brother, which is why I felt so conflicted over her, because you can see it from both sides. But as Henry and Sam, 100%, you know, I would do that for my kid, my brother, my sister, whatever.
Yeah.
Without thinking about the consequences. And I think Henry knew that Joel would be kind of affected by hearing this side of the story and almost kind of bring him around to his side and not give him up. And he talks to him about being a dad and all that, you know, and that was really well done. And Henry wasn't silly. He knew that by saying this to Joel, it was more likely that he would allow him to kind of continue on with them because there's strength in numbers.
Yeah, agreed.
So yeah, it was a good little segue into finding out more about why they're in this situation and why Kathleen is after them.
Yeah, and it did feel like Henry was kind of very calculated in the way that he told him. So it was like, I know you're going to understand because I've realised you had a child by the way you treat Ellie. So therefore, if I... Almost like he used it to not manipulate Joel around, but at the same time to try and work on any kind of parental feelings that Joel does have.
Yes, and Joel does a good job of kind of, or he thinks he does a good job of being detached and cold and Ellie is cargo, but instinctively, that's not what he thinks. Whether he knows it or not, you know, at this point, Joel knows that he is protecting Ellie and they're a family now. You know, yeah. So Henry picked up on that, and I think most parents would be able to pick up on that.
No, I agree completely. I do agree. Like, he's very much become a guardian to her, for sure. So they do get through the tunnels. They come out the other end, and as soon as Henry starts kind of bragging that his plan wins, you know they're in trouble.
Yeah, yeah,
like, yeah. I got us out of here. I'm great. And you're like, as soon as that starts happening in any show, you're kind of like, oh, something's going to go wrong.
Not going to be that easy.
No, and it does. The Kathleen and her troops kind of pin them down, and obviously, before that, we get the sniper in the window.
Yes, I wasn't expecting that at all. So again, they're not silly. They've got people on these random outposts, which again ups that fear factor of when they get through this, who else is going to be out? How far widespread are they? You know?
Yeah, how far are they going to get before they're actually freeing out?
Yeah, but that moment again was oh my God, like watching through my fingers thinking what's going to happen, and that whole section of the show, I was literally sat on the edge of my seat because you just know something bad's coming.
Yeah, but like so obviously I've played the game, but I've realised from watching this there's a lot of things I have forgotten. Some things I'd remembered, but a lot of things I'd forgotten as well. And obviously Joel goes up to the window, takes out the sniper. He asks the guy not to do anything. He does kind of pretty much begs him not to do anything stupid. But he does something stupid. We hear the gunshot and that's that. And then he realises the radio and the walkie-talkie and stuff, and you're like, oh no. Moments later, Kathleen and her crew are quite literally driving through the middle of the road.
Yeah. I mean, until that point, I thought maybe this was just a random guy out on his own, you know, out to save himself. But like, say, you see the radio and you kind of go, oh, shit.
Oh, massively. Yeah. And like the way that truck comes through the middle of the street, it's like, yeah.
Drives like I do.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, dear.
My wife doesn't listen, so I can say same as her then, so it's fine. Hopefully she can't hear me. No. But yes, the truck gets them down, and in the end, Henry is kind of... He stands up and gives himself over. He realises it's the only way it might work. He hands himself over, saying, let the kids go, and Kathleen's straight up ready to kill everyone. No compassion, no nothing. She's like, no, you're all dead.
It's just a blind rage at that point. Yeah. I think she's completed her mission to find Henry. I don't even know if she's that bothered about Sam at this point. You know, anyone with half a piece of compassion in their body would be, you know, Sam's a child, he's been poorly, whatever. But Henry, she's just completely blinded by the rage. But there was a really lovely moment before that with them, and he almost silently said to Ellie, you know, take care of him.
Yeah.
You know, and that was lovely. And Ellie immediately went into that protector role again. And then he stands up, and Kathleen's just there ready to take them out. And
then all hell breaks loose. We finally get a bloater.
Oh, what a name. Who comes up with these names? When you were talking about bloaters on the WhatsApp group, I genuinely wasn't expecting them to look like they did. You know, I keep off trailers, I keep off of any kind of social media until I've watched it, because I don't want to have any spoilers. So in my mind, I was thinking of something a bit more gooey.
Yeah, eating too much too much bread, it's fine, yeah.
Like almost who's the jelly guy in Ghostbusters? That's kind of how I was picturing this thing.
Stay Puft the Marshmallow Man comes walking out, yeah.
Yeah, or Blubber, you know, that kind of. I had this jelly-like thing in my brain. So when this thing comes out of the floor, it really took me back.
It's no Mr. Blobby getting out of the ground, no, that's for sure. But yeah, this thing it's big and it means business, and it is destroying everything. You lose your, as quotations, hot bearded man.
Oh, I know. And again,
head ripped off.
As soon as I said it, and Sam kind of gave me a side eye. Oh God, I've jinxed him. But yeah, that was brutal. Hot beardy guy was a hot beardy guy, who is the voice of Tommy in the game. I found out.
Yes. Yep.
Interesting. I think there's a few, isn't there?
There's a few different people that kind of appear throughout that have done voices, which is really cool.
It's a nice touch.
I think so. I do think so. We also get the really creepy child clicker.
That showed up in my nightmares, it's got to be said.
Yeah, that was... yeah.
I hadn't seen any child clickers until that point. I didn't even think that... again, that's not where my mind goes. These clicker things are fully grown adults. You know, you don't imagine that actually a child is going to get affected in the same way. And anything with children or anything doll-like is really creepy.
Yeah, whereas this child, it's walking creepy. It does the weird kind of click. Oh, it was horrible. Yeah,
you know what Logan's going as for Halloween now, don't you?
Oh, yeah. He's going as a clicker. Yep.
Absolutely.
Damn straight. But yeah, so Ellie is able to escape the child clicker in the car. Joel is up high trying to take shots and protecting them as best as he can. Henry and Sam are trapped under a truck but manage to work their way out.
See, that truck scene, I thought at that point, that was it, game over for the both of them.
Yep.
I thought that was it. They were goners at that point.
Oh, sadly, I knew better.
No.
They do manage to get out. Kathleen is also killed by said child clicker.
Yeah, again,
Ellie with the little look over her shoulder, I'm like, oh.
And I know she kind of deserves it, and I'm glad, obviously, she's not there to carry on her attacks against Sam and Henry. However, I quite like her character. I would have happily watched more of her,
More
because I like
her in it.
Yeah, but it was these short blocks of people coming and going makes my head spin.
Well, talking about characters coming and going, they all get to like a safe house, and they're going to hold up for the night. And Henry and Joel are talking. They put the kids to bed, and Sam kind of asked the question of, "Are you ever afraid?" And as soon as he asked that question, my brain went, "Oh, here we go. Here it comes. Here it comes." So he says, are you still the same person inside? Are those monsters still the same people inside? And I now know exactly what's coming. I'm like, yep, here we go. This is it. This is the moment. And Ellie promises to stay awake with him. As in all these programs, that person then falls asleep.
Obviously.
Wakes up and Sam is sat looking out the window.
Yeah, so again, I obviously don't know the story. Wasn't thinking that was what was going to happen.
But we missed out. Ellie obviously cut her hand and tried to use her blood as a medicine as well. Can't forget that bit.
Yeah, and I thought at this point that this was going to be the turning point for her kind of accepting, and Joel accepting that, maybe there is something here, and she was going to fix Sam, or he was going to be okay. And they'd had this conversation about her Ellie being afraid of ending up alone, and that her and Sam were going to carry on together, and they'd trot off merrily on their way. But no.
Sam has turned during the night, and attacks Ellie. Ellie bursts through the door being attacked, and Henry takes the gun and not only kills his brother, but also then turns the gun on himself, and boom, end of episode is Henry killing himself, and then Joel burying the bodies. That was quite an end to an episode, I thought.
I wasn't happy.
I can well imagine.
I was not happy. I wasn't expecting it. It was the last thing, is that a step too far? That wouldn't have even come into my mind. Just poor Henry, that quick reflex reaction, and then Joel looking at him, pleading to say, don't do it, don't kill yourself. And then he does it. It was, fuck. I can't even find the words to describe that moment. And I just kind of sat staring at the screen, going, what the hell have I just watched? It was awful. But I'm glad that Joel buried them.
Yeah, he
I'm
buried
glad
them.
they
She
got a
left
burial.
the sorry note.
Oh, my heart broke a little bit then. And you can feel the grief. You can feel it, even from Joel. He's sat, he's brooding, and horrific.
I know. And then we go straight into this week's episode, Kin. So we are a bit like 3 months later. There's snow everywhere, and they are making their way through, carrying on their journey across. We meet Marlon and Florence.
I didn't catch their names. Was that their name?
That was their name. A little old couple in the woods.
Yeah. They were great. They were great. They very much, their banter and the way they spoke to each other very much reminds me of myself and Ryan.
He wants to know why didn't you shoot them? The guns are over there, so I made them soup instead.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. So they were off the grid. They weren't hiding from the infected. They were like an off-grid type pairing, weren't they? That's what I got. Yeah. Okay.
They were kind of just living for themselves, cracking on, just staying out the way of everyone, basically.
Yeah.
They tell them not to go over the river of death, and Joel, being Joel, was like, well, I'm going that way anyway, so don't worry about it. They come to the first river, cross it, nothing really happens. They set up a couple of different campsites, and Ellie takes over kind of watching and things, and we kind of get that little bit of dynamic kind of changes a bit more between them.
Is that when she's up on the rock and he tells her to come down?
That's it. Don't fall. Yeah, if you're going to break your neck, you don't fall
You're going to break your neck. Yeah, that was another, like you say, another barrier, almost another layer coming away of that closed off Joel. And you just see that their relationship again is shifting, which I really like.
I do. It's nice to kind of watch this kind of the dynamic between them change. They do then make it across, and they realise the second river could actually be the river of death that they were talking about, not the first one. And all of a sudden they are surrounded by these cowboy-looking people on their horses who have a dog that can sniff the infected. We watch Joel. So Joel has already grabbed his chest once and kind of paused and stuff. So you know there's something happening with Joel here.
Yeah, I nearly turned it off at that point the first time because I'm thinking, no, I can't watch.
But
not very well.
He completely freezes though when the dog goes up to Ellie.
Yeah.
And we hear him talking later to his brother about kind of why. But luckily Ellie is able to calm the dog down, stroking around, playing with it, and they get to go into this new civilization. And we are reintroduced with Tommy.
Oh, their little reunion. Oh, it was lovely.
The brothers are reunited, yeah.
I was so happy that he's finally found him. But I did feel very fleetingly for Ellie. There was a little look, a glance that she gave, and it was almost he's found his brother and he's going to ditch me now.
Yeah, what about me sort of feeling, yeah.
Yeah. Which was tough. That was tough to watch.
It was, no, you're right. And obviously he is now married to Maria. He's Maria, married, he's got a baby. We find out he's got a baby on the way. And things have changed between Joel and Tommy in the last 20 odd years, or well, however long he's been away for. Like I say, Tommy's now kind of settled down, married by the looks of it, baby on the way, telling Joel, you know, what we did in the past wasn't right, but we had to do it, but that's not how things are anymore. And Joel doesn't take it overly well. There's a bit of a falling out about how just because your life has stopped doesn't mean everyone else's has to, and it kind of comes to a head that they're not going to agree on this one, and Joel storms out. He's then off getting ready. He's determined that, right, we are off the next day. Forget about this place. We're off. We're going on our journey still. Ellie is off to watch a movie after having some chats and a haircut with Maria. What did you make of the conversation between Maria and Ellie during the haircut?
Well, the haircut itself was a moment for me. I think it was probably the first bit of real tenderness that Ellie would have experienced, and she didn't quite know how to react. And obviously she had the parcel of presents left on the bed after she'd had her shower. First real mothering moment, I think, for Ellie. And obviously then she's talking about Sarah, which Ellie had I forgot that Ellie had no idea.
Now, do you think Maria did that on purpose, or do you think it was genuinely just a slip up of, well, you must know about her because it's her daughter? Or do you think it was kind of just planting the seeds in of, well, look how much she hasn't told you?
No, I think it was for me, it felt like more like a genuine slip up. The look on her face was almost, shit, what have I done? You know, I think she genuinely felt bad for kind of letting it slip. But if she hadn't at that point, I'm sure Tommy would have said something.
Someone would have mentioned it, yeah.
Yeah. But it kind of made me feel a bit bad, because I think Ellie at this point maybe thought that her and Joel's relationship had gone further than that. But I think it was not a breakthrough moment, almost like cleared the fog a little bit for Ellie. And things probably made a bit more sense about Joel at this point.
Okay, so she's then taken to the cinema, and we're going to whistle tour through this episode quickly because we don't have that much time left. Joel and Tommy have their conversation, and Joel admits to Tommy that he doesn't feel like he is the right person to protect Ellie. He explains to Tommy about why Ellie is so special, and that he doesn't believe in his age and his condition anymore, that he is the right person to get her to where she needs to go. So he basically kind of convinces Tommy to do it for him.
And I wasn't quite expecting Tommy to react to that in the way that he did. I thought he would take a bit more convincing, but he broke pretty easily.
Yeah, he does. He kind of goes, yep, all right, kind of, he agrees to it. But it turns out when Joel gets back to the house that Ellie had snuck away and had overheard the entire conversation.
Yeah.
Which leads to quite a confrontation between the two of them. And Ellie mentioning Sarah. Which went down about as well as was expected, I'd say.
Yeah, I to be honest, I don't think it would have gone any other way.
No.
And Joel's gone to great lengths to kind of keep that from her. He's had plenty of opportunities to tell her. And he didn't know how to react. He just snapped.
He does. He's like, you're not my daughter. I'm not your father. We're not family. Don't mention her again. You're leaving with Tommy in the morning. See you later. Closes the door.
And at that point, my heart broke a little bit.
So how did you feel the next morning then when Joel is stood there by the horse giving her the choice?
I loved that. I really did. And they didn't even have to really say anything. It was
she just throws the bag. Come on then.
What are you doing? And she's like, well, obviously, stupid, I'm coming with you.
Yeah.
You know? And it was almost like the night before hadn't happened. It was bizarre. But it was brilliant. And that, again, just shows that they can be honest with each other, and they have this kind of unspoken kind of bond now. And it was a great moment for me. And
it kind of, again, proves that Joel does have that kind of commitment feeling towards her, which is good.
100%, yeah.
They then head off and they make it to the Fireflies University kind of campus.
Yeah.
What they didn't expect to find was it completely deserted.
No, I didn't see that coming. Is that from the game? Do they get there and they're not there?
I believe, yeah, that is all in the game. The monkeys have taken over. The lab monkeys have taken over, which was kind of fun.
The monkeys were a great touch, by the way. Love the monkeys.
Just a little bit of fun in there for them. But there is a confrontation. Joel finds 4 people walking around. They look like kind of like raiders, like thugs. And there's a bit of a confrontation, but, you know, Joel being Joel is able to whoop them, protect Ellie, and off they go. Or so we think.
Yeah.
About 3 or 4 minutes before this happened, I turned around to my wife and went, I feel like they've missed something out here. Something definitely happens. And I don't see where it's going to happen now. Then it happens. Joel is stabbed. He makes the rookie mistake of pulling the knife out. He never pulled the knife out.
As soon as he did it, I just shouted at the television, you never remove.
Never pull out that. No.
Never remove the knife.
He pulls the knife out. Ellie panics, gets him on the horse. They get away to safety, and the episode ends with Joel falling off the horse and collapsing. Go on. I'm going to give you a full 30 seconds. Just rant at me. Go on.
Wow.
Because I know I can feel it's there.
I don't even know what to say to you. I broke my heart to the point my husband left the kitchen and went, why are you crying? And I'm sat there thinking, fuck, why did nobody warn me? Why did nobody tell me? And at this point, it clicked. Isn't a story about Joel. This is Ellie's story.
Yep.
And how the fuck did I not see this coming? Excuse my French. How could I have been so bloody stupid? And I kind of fucking hate my life right now.
So me and Sam watched this episode before you, and me and Sam were in our group chat messaging like, wait for the emojis.
Yeah.
Wait for the emojis, they're coming, and you didn't let us down.
It's awful. I'm gutted. I'm really, really gutted. I just don't know. I don't have the words. What am I going to do next week when I watch the next episode? What is going to happen?
Well, let's just say don't get attached to any characters.
Well, I've learned that now, but I had assumed
even the main characters. There we go.
Joel would have got to the end, you know. I guess his story was finding Tommy.
Yeah.
And Ellie's story, you know, what's she going to do? Is she going to go back? Is she going to carry on? Is she going to get captured?
We will find out in next week's episode. I am hoping all three of us will be back for next week's episode. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and I'm hoping I don't have to shout at anyone next week, but I'm going to say I probably will.
I reckon most likely.
Oh, dear. Question.
Yes.
Are Ellie's parents really dead? Is she really an orphan?
I believe so.
Oh, okay.
I do believe so.
So there's no big family reunion where her mum goes, oh, I'm not really dead.
No, I do think she's actually dead. I think that is a thing.
Okay. All right then.
Yeah, that is all my notes. Is that all your notes?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it has been a bit of a quicker episode than normal. That is just due to time restraints on our end. I hope you have all enjoyed the podcast. Kate, I'll leave you to say goodbye.
Bye.
And until next week, guys, have a good one.
Thank you for listening to the Stuff and Things podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. You can find us on Facebook or online. Simply search the Stuff and Things podcast to join in our conversation every week.